Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This is the broadcast for March 19th in the year of our Lord, 2025, hour 2 of 2. I'm sorry, hour 1 of 2. It's going to be 2 hours, though. Hard-hitting talk. We're going to skip all floater breaks because, man, we got so much to cover, so little time. We reject revolution. Unless it's a Jesus revolution, then we're in. James Edwards with me. ThePoliticalCesspool.org. Race, politics, and hypocrisy in 21st century America. ThePoliticalCesspool.org. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Sam, it is as you say. There is just so much to get to, so much going on. It just has been exhilarating this year to be a newsman or to be a commentator, and it continues here every day on your show, my show. Hey, this weekend on TPC, we are doing this March Around the World series where during the month of March we exclusively feature international guests, no Americans. And we have a journalist from Moscow coming on. He lives in Russia and is going to be giving us an update from the ground there. And then we'll go straight to South Africa, which has been in the news a lot as a result of Trump's recent actions. And so we'll be visiting Russia and South Africa this weekend. We were in Germany last week, Ireland, Croatia a couple of weeks ago, the UK, Canada, Puerto Rico, Brazil. It's wonderful to be able to do this, to be able to bring people on that other networks either won't do or can't do, and Sam gives us the opportunity to do it right here at Liberty News Radio. So it's a wonderful thing, and it's always wonderful to be back with you on your show, Sam.
And there's so much to cover, and, you know, I'm going to be the curmudgeon during the show today, and I don't mean to be, but I'm a truth teller, ladies and gentlemen, and I like to see both sides of a discussion, and I really love a lot of what President Donald Trump is doing. Don't misunderstand me one bit. But I believe Trump's being punked. Trump's lack of political knowledge is swamping him. The deep state is about to suck him under, and it's about impossible to stop because the conservatives are so giddy with success that they can't see the forest through the trees, ladies and gentlemen. That's the reality check. We'll talk about it with James Edwards. First one, JFK files released. How many times have we been told they've been released? Anyway, and then they basically just say, at the FBI, they just found 2,400 more a couple of weeks ago. 2,400 more pages. Folks, listen, Donald Trump says he's going to release an unredacted 80,000 pages. Do you know what length the average book is, James?
The average book, I'd say 200 pages.
300 pages.
Okay,
because you got short books, kids' books, and all that kind of stuff. But then you got really long books, novels, and Atlas Shrugged, and, the average book is about 300 pages. Do you realize how many books 80,000 pages is at 300 pages a book?
And most of it's just going to be technical and procedural memos and things that you would have to sift through forever to get to anything meat.
That is correct. But here's the bottom line. In my opinion, it's an absolute big old nothing burger. And here's my logic to prove it. It's anecdotal proof, but follow the logic and see what you think. The JFK files just dropped. Not. So you look at the 60-plus years that we've been waiting for this stuff. I'm almost 60 years old. I was born in 67. This was like 63 range, right? So it's over 60 years, people. And they've had over 60 years to manipulate and obfuscate and delete and transfer and manipulate and whatever. The Warren Commission lied and manipulated back in the day. Now we're supposedly getting all the information, but we were just told that, they found 2,500 new files, new pages just recently. Are you kidding me? 60 years later, they found 2,500 new documents. Well, how many documents is there then? And no one really even knows. And if you found 2,500 60 years later, how do you know in 30 years you won't find another 2,500 or another 10,000 or another 100? I mean, how do you even know? You don't know. And you're being punked and lied to, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be very clear. And there's no new information in this at all that I can see. Hey, the bottom line is this guy was a lone actor, and he killed JFK. Never mind that he was a horrible shot. Never mind all the contrary evidence. Never mind. Okay, no answers. CIA, were they involved? Well, no real answers. You're getting punked. You're getting 80,000 pages of a nothing burger. Okay? And you say, well, Sam, they just dropped like last night, buddy. You can't. Okay. There's not a single person that's even reporting any details right now. They say, oh, Sam, some of it's online. It's hard to read. It's not redacted, but man, several of the pages, because it's 1963, it's hard to read. You can't really know. I don't want 80,000 pages of a nothing burger. 266 literal sizes of books that I got to go through. Complicated, convoluted, confusing, contradictory. The list goes on and on and on and on. Now, I appreciate Trump releasing the files because he said he would, and it's better than nothing, okay? However, at the end of the day, you don't know any more about how JFK was murdered than you did 60 years ago. None. You've got a bunch of people that have written books. Oh, speaking of books, 300 pages an average book. Most of the books about JFK are even bigger. And they tell you their opinions. Oh, so-and-so killed so-and-so. So-and-so did this. So-and-so, it was the CIA. It was the this. It was the that. Go back to the Bo Gritz days. It was a 3-man assassination team. Go back. Okay, everybody has an opinion. And you're left with just as much conspiracy at the end of it all 60 years later and 80,000 pages unredacted released by the champion President Donald Trump. And you know nothing more today than you knew when you were born, James.
Well, Sam, some days you mentioned you do wake up on the wrong side of the microphone and are a little grouchy, but you are spot on with this one. And I always thought that this was a little gimmicky, that they were going to release never before seen information about the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King. That
we
never
haven't even
really.
Those, buddy. You haven't even released those yet. That'll be another couple 100,000 pages you'll sit through for a lifetime, right?
Now, that always seemed to not pass the smell test. There was a lot that Trump is doing and has done that is very concrete and substantive, but this was never really something that I expected much to come of. They are, finding these new things. I mean, that's also fanciful. I think there are certainly things that the government surely has, information that the government surely has about the assassination of JFK that they've never released. And so for people hoping that this would be that, not that they're finding it, just that they always knew where it was and what it was, and now they're releasing it. But for people who expected that, they're certainly probably disappointed. They are calling revelations things that were known days after the assassination and even published in major magazines. So I think they just got a lot of people
and
forgot
that just
this
proves
stuff.
you they're fraudulent. So let me ask you the next question. What do you think happened to JFK?
Oh, I mean, how many conspiratorial books and movies have been made about this? I think there's probably some. Probably, if I had to guess, there was probably some credence to the theory that wanting to dismantle the CIA and meddling in foreign affairs in ways that the powers that be didn't want to do. When I'm talking about a president, I always just say, remember, he's only the president. I think the government probably assassinated JFK.
All right, now, let me ask you a question then. If that really was the case, do you think that they would admit it? Do you think there'd ever be a scenario where the government would say, yeah, the CIA murdered him? Yep, it's true. Sorry. It's absolutely the fact. I'm sorry. It's true. You think they're ever going to do that under any circumstances whatsoever?
No, they would never do that because it would cause too much damage to the brand. It would cause too much damage to the institutions. So, no.
Right.
So that's why I never thought
to
anything.
Admit the truth, and that is the truth. Now, they say at the end of this, it's Oswald acted alone and killed him. That's what we knew from the very, 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 very start.
As always. Yeah.
Don't believe that's true. But if that comes out, then they're going, see, the government's honest and true. But my question is this. Why would we withhold all these documents for 60 years if that's all there was to it?
No, it doesn't make any sense. Well, you're making too much sense here.
Okay, they wouldn't. They'd release it and go, there's nothing here, guys. I don't know what you're talking about. The next question is this. How do you get, and I don't understand this, but just follow me. How do you get 80,000 pages on this topic?
Well, let me just say this about that.
Do you realize how much 80,000 pages is?
More than anybody's ever going to read. Even the most attentive scholar of JFK
You'd have to read 266 equivalent books on only this topic. Hard to read, scanned stuff that you can't even, understand or read and everything else. How are you going to do that?
And it's still heavily redacted, by the way. I mean, keep in mind, this is not just the full Monty where there's nothing taken out or excised. I mean, there's black marks and whiteout all through this thing. But I think that the new JFK declassification show that the CIA requested that mentions of Israel be redacted. So here's something that's interesting, going back to why he may have been killed. This is just speculative, and everybody's got a theory on it. But, I mean, here's what JFK, what we know that he did want that could have made him run afoul with others in the government or the shadow government. He wanted no nukes in Israel, back in the 1960s. He wanted AIPAC's predecessor.
Hold on, stop. I want no nukes in Israel.
Yeah, but you're not the president, so they might let you live.
I understand, but I'm just saying, think about that 60 years later, right?
So no nukes in Israel was something that he was very much vocally advocating for. Yeah, he wanted AIPAC's predecessor, which AIPAC is the power lobby in Washington, this Israeli pro-Israeli lobby. He wanted their predecessor to be registered as a foreign agent, and as I said, he wanted to dissolve the CIA completely. So there's no way that these recent declassifications.
Wait a minute, I want to dissolve the CIA completely.
See, but these could have been the things that caused him to get killed, because this idea, I mean, and it's similar in a way to the attempted assassination of Trump this year. You got this lone guy who just happens to be at the perfect place at the perfect time to assassinate the hardest person to kill in the world, and he was able to pull it off. I mean, none of that passes the smell test, but there's no way that these recent declassifications represent all the JFK assassinated related documents. I mean, there were you're talking about 80,000. There are 5 million documents that we know of. So at the very least, the U.S. government is not going to release details that pertain to presidential security. However, it's been suspected, I think, that the real reason why the files haven't been released is, as I said, because of the brand damage that it would cause the government's institutions. It would imply that the government had involvement, collusion, and foreknowledge of the assassination of its own president.
Well, so 4 years later, then we have the USS Liberty, where Israel literally took that sucker down and tried to kill everybody aboard. Why don't we release all the information related to that, James? How many documents will that be?
I mean, that was just so far out in the open. I mean, they could do that, but I think there's no question as to whether or not Israel did that or not. I mean, even Tucker Carlson's talking about that in the light of day now, and that's something. That's a little bit different. I mean, I think the only question would be Israel maintained at the time, and I guess presumably still does, that they didn't know it was an American ship, even though it had an American flag on it, and they were on the radio with them, but. Yeah, so there's that. But other than that, I mean,
what about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump just a few months ago? Do you have any more pattern on that sucker?
That is to me a modern day.
That's 10 times more valuable to get the answers to, right?
They had that was like the Las Vegas shooting. I mean, a week we were talking
about the Las Vegas shooting. How many documents relate to that? And did we ever get to the bottom of that?
Well, I mean, and I guess you could say, well, yeah, it was the biggest mass murder in American history, but, a presidential assassination is arguably more newsworthy. I don't know. I mean, but the thing is, Sam, I mean, we joked about this last summer. That Donald Trump coming on this show, Donald Trump Jr. coming on this show in 2016 made more news than the attempted assassination of the president. I mean, it went from a week later, it was just a trickle. And then it stopped completely. I mean, nobody knows anything about this guy. I couldn't even tell you his name anymore. I don't know anything about his background. I've never really understood how he got there, how he was able to fire that shot that came within a millimeter of assassinating the now president. I mean, there was just hardly any information that came out about that. And then, of course, the official story, once again, just like Oswald, lone gunner weirdo, just happened to be there, just fluke.
Bad shot, unable to shoot straight, that guy,
But then, of course, he's dead. They never survive. I mean, so he's dead immediately after, and then he's like, literally cremated within like a few days. I mean,
Dang right, you can't take a look at the body or do an autopsy or anything else, buddy.
Weird.
See, that's what I'm saying is it's just very, very strange. So I'm telling you right now, if you're being punked about the JFK files, they dropped, there's nothing there. And there's not going to be anything there because the government's never going to admit their part in the criminal activity at all. Now, let's ask the next question. Let's say it's not our government. Let's say it was the Russian government. Let's say that he was a communist and Oswald loved, Russia or loved the Soviet Union or whatever, and they put him up to it. You think they're going to right now, while we're dealing with Russia ties and Russia discussions, and Donald just sat down with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, you think they're going to go, yeah, the Russians killed JFK? Yep, sure did. So they're not going to even tell you if it's a foreign government that did it. Well, if you take out all governments, the likelihood of the guy being assassinated is almost zero. Not saying it could never happen, but almost zero. And if it did, and it really wasn't a government, then they'd probably tell you who really did it, right?
Well, one would think, but again, we barely know anything about the guy who did the modern day equivalency 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whenever it was. So they let you know what they want you to know.
Anyway, I find that very, very interesting, but then I apply that to other things. Okay, for example, what about 9/11? What about the real story there? What about the Oklahoma City bombing? What about the real story there? What about whether we have gone to the moon or not, James? Now, you can say all these are conspiracies, Sam, and you're crazy. Why bring them up? It just shows that you're not credible. No. It shows that I am credible, because what are we talking about here? Are we talking about transparency or not? And if we can't be transparent about if we went to the moon or not, and if we can't be transparent about JFK or not, and if we can't be transparent about the current or latest assassination attempt on Donald Trump or not, what can we be candid about? How many documents do you think there are on the moon landings? Less than JFK, right?
Well, I still wouldn't
they'll
bet
bury
my
you
eternal
in billions of pages, and you'll never get to the bottom of any of it.
I still wouldn't bet my eternal soul that they didn't go to the moon. But I'm telling you, every day, I don't think they had the foreknowledge at that time about just how much technology would advance.
Here's my bottom line: doesn't matter. Prove it. Release all the docs.
Well, it just looks. I mean, it does look very ridiculous. It looks very hard to believe based upon the footage.
Release everything. That's all you got to do, James.
Yeah.
Is Donald going to release all that kind of stuff?
That would damage, I guess, the morale. I mean, if you can't believe that, which I'm very skeptical of that, but if you can't believe that, I mean, then it gets to the point of if they lied about that, they obviously would lie about everything, which is a little bit closer to the truth. Ironically, that is closer to the truth. I mean, the thing about 9/11, I think, is, at least there, it's just a real clear line. America wanted to get into a war in the Middle East to benefit the military-industrial complex.
What about Pearl Harbor?
Lobby. Well, I mean, that's flat out historical fact now that the United States manipulated Japan to attack so they could get into World War II. I don't even think that's even up for debate.
I think it's documented, factual, but I think the government still denies it, still pretends it isn't the case.
Oh, that they got caught unawares and had no idea that might be coming and didn't know it was coming in advance. Yeah.
No, that's still the government's kind of mainstream narrative, even so, right?
Yep.
Even though the facts are on the table differently. So you've got facts about a lot of things. You got facts about the USS Liberty. You got facts about the Pearl Harbor scenario, but it doesn't change the narrative, right? Okay. I mean, I can keep going on and on. What about where did Hitler go? Did he really commit suicide, as they say, or whatever else? And or did he end up in Argentina? See, we don't even have the answer to that, James.
I would
what
say
we know is they had documents that were released showing that the CIA or somebody was looking for him in the 60s, which means they don't believe he was dead 20 years later, right?
A lot of them got down there, including Adolf Eichmann, and so it was at least, because you never did really see a body, it was plausible that he may have gotten down there, but I don't think so. But nevertheless, I mean, even if he did, because of these other things, you'll never know.
Right, that's right. And here's the point, though. If I bring that up, if I just say, hey, the CIA was looking for him in the 60s, and there's allegations that he went to Argentina, let's go ahead and get all the docs released on that. That's even way older than the JFK stuff by 15, almost 20 years, right?
Yes, that's right.
So let's have the bottom line on that. And here's what they'll do. They'll go, Sam, you're a Holocaust denier. You're the enemy of America. You're evil. You're hate-filled. And I'm going, no. I'm just asking logical questions. If the CIA documented they were looking for him 20 years later, I'm kind of wondering, does that mean I'm a nutcase? Or does that mean I just don't trust my government because they lie at every single turn?
There's a lot of lying going on. It always has been, especially about these things that are, stories or actions at that level that, cause a pivot in history.
Yeah, now George Bush said, hey, you know what? Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, these guys, they were the bad guys. They were, okay, what about that stuff? Let's dig into that dude, right?
That is the international war equivalent of the lone gunman who just by dumb luck was able to walk into these positions to get these kill shots. That these, I mean, you're talking about people with, on average, this isn't, trying to be funny, but on average, it is a proven fact that Muslims have an 85 IQ on average. That's their average IQ. And that a group of these people who were taking some flight lessons, and I got a private pilot's license back in my early 20s. And so I know a little bit about this. They were practicing flying Cessnas, supposedly, according to the official story. They went, and so they would be able to direct this huge passenger jet into a building at that speed, and they were able to do that because they took a few flight lessons taking off in a Cessna. They never landed, even a Cessna. But from that, they were able to do this with these, huge passenger carriers and 85 IQ. They were able to do all of that with box cutters. I mean, that is, of course, on that level, the equivalent of the Oswald type of story. It just doesn't, it really doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
You got that right. And you look at that and you just go, wow. So I just think we're being punked on so many subjects, it's not even funny. For example, let's take one last issue to kind of bring it all home. Joe Biden. Was Joe Biden incompetent or not in the last, years, days, whatever you want to say, of his presidency? You and I would say yes. He was incompetent. Even the courts and where he testified, that's all been, hey, they said they were going to get to the bottom of that and release that. And, hey, we released the transcript, but you don't get the narrative. Let's hear the audio. Let's hear, Joe stumble around. No, can't release that, right? And at the end of the day, you got to ask a question. Is it really we're going to say, hey, none of his orders count because they were auto pen? In other words, it wasn't really him signing. It was a digital signature, possibly by somebody else. Or is it the incompetence issue, or both that's the issue? Bottom line is, will Trump's claim that it's all null and void stand? Or will Biden's signing and agenda and auto pen and whatever you want to call it stand? What do you say, James?
I don't think that is ridiculous at all for Trump to say what he said yesterday about that I totally believe what Mike Johnson said about having this discussion in the Oval Office, and Biden had no idea what he had signed. He had thought he'd signed something entirely different. And so to claim that because these were used with an auto pen, that they should be null and void, and that Trump was going to move forward in investigating these previously.
Yeah, but you got to understand, you know how you said going to the moon will destroy the whole narrative, the whole confidence in government, the whole brand will be destroyed? Or if JFK, the whole brand will be destroyed if they admit that, if they say Joe didn't know what he was signing, and or it was an auto pen, so he didn't know cognitively, or he didn't do it because it was an auto pen. Either way, you erode the whole government, because you had Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, you had Republicans and Democrats and everybody telling you that he was competent and okay. If it's not true, what happens then, James?
Well, I don't think that would harm the government fundamentally writ large.
To have a guy sit there for 4 years that's not even competent to be the commander-in-chief of the free world?
That would hurt the Democratic Party much more than some of these other issues that would.
What about when Mike Johnson knew about it a year ago and said nothing and allowed Donald Trump
that's a good point,
to run against a fake candidate such as Joe Biden under false pretenses and everything else? And then they claim there's no election fraud? How does that going to work?
It's a good point. That's a good question, but I still don't think this is going to stick on him as much as it would the Democrats.
All right, when we get back, James, I want to get your take. So what are they going to do then? Is the auto pen or the incompetence going to stand and the documents are null and void? Or are we going to double down and say it still counts and Trump made a good point, but it doesn't fly? We'll see. Hang tight. We'll discuss it. You're listening to the one and only Liberty Roundtable Live. I'm telling you, we've all been punked. Hang tight. More in seconds.
Pursuing liberty, using the Constitution as our guide. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. A Biden-appointed federal judge in D.C. is blocking, at least for the time being, the Pentagon's ban on transgender people in the military. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts rejecting President Trump's call for the impeachment of certain judges.
In a rare statement of rebuke, the Chief Justice said for more than 2 centuries it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. Roberts issued his statement just hours after a social media post from Donald Trump, who described a federal judge as a troublemaker, agitator, and radical left lunatic who should be impeached. The judge had blocked deportation flights being carried out under an 18th century law. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Working with NASA, SpaceX has safely brought home 2 astronauts. They were stranded for more than 9 months on the International Space Station. No more press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, 3 for whatever when you call the Department of Homeland Security. From now on, it's English only.
The move follows the president's March 1st order making English the official language of the United States. The administration says the reason is twofold. The cancellation of the contract with a translation service provider saves over $580,000. The English-only requirement encourages people to learn English. The president's order said, quote, speaking English not only opens doors economically, but it helps newcomers engage in their communities, participate in national traditions, and give back to our society, end quote. Keisha Stevens reporting.
The UN says an international staffer has been killed, 5 others wounded, an explosion in the Gaza Strip. Ukrainian President Zelensky says today he expects he'll be speaking with President Trump. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 204 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group. And I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney. And the truth is, I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney, I'll apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare, or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com. Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Your call is being transferred to the listening ear. Listening professionals dedicated to hearing you.
Hello, listening ear. Who am I listening to?
Carrie, but I was calling my mom.
Yes, you were, but your mom was so busy she felt it was important for you to have someone who could completely focus on listening to you and you alone. So she subscribed to our service. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Well, I'm not quite sure.
Where to start? Well, I can listen to school issues like science projects. I can listen to boy problems, although that's an extra $3 per call because of the emotional drain on me. How about we start with how you wish you had made cheerleader?
I didn't try out for cheerleader.
This isn't Mary?
Carrie. I'm Carrie.
Oh, sorry.
There is no substitute for a loving parent. And when you really listen, love is what they'll hear. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For more tips on strengthening your family, visit family.mormon.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Sam Bushman, James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org on your radio. So my question for the couple of hours today, have we the people been punked? And I think the answer is a clear, resounding yes. A game changer, question mark? The new media takes center stage, question mark? Who controls the narrative, question mark? That's really the discussion point today as we talk about the new media. Conservatives are celebrating that, man, we control the narrative now. I think they're absolutely getting punked. They don't control the narrative at all. Let me give you some details to kind of help break this down, then we'll go to James for some commentary here. The White House, I don't know if you know, but released this thing, whitehouse.gov/new media. And a bunch of people signed up for it. I signed up for it. Everybody I know signed up for it. Turned out they say the White House received over 7,400 new media requests within 24 hours of Caroline Leavitt bringing this forward, James. Now, I haven't heard a word back. Have you?
No, I haven't. I did it twice just to be sure it went through. Because, of course, we all got really credentialed by them before.
Yeah.
So why not again?
So the bottom line, though, is none of us have heard back. And I've talked to, 10, 20, 30, 40 people about this. None of us they've gotten back to. So is this a real thing, James, or is this just to make you feel good? Hey, we'll put up a little paper, little deal, let you fill it out, and we'll just ignore you ever more after that kind of a thing. Is that what we're talking about?
Probably the latter. But
you say, Sam, it hasn't been very long. This happened like on January 29th or something like that. Give them a little bit of time. I mean, it's only March the 19th. It's only been almost 2 months. Come on, you'll hear back. And I'm thinking, really? You think so? See, I don't think so. I think we're being punked, James. There's no effort at all to bring us into the media. There's not.
And even if they said, well, we got close to 10,000 people, a lot of these are just folks with a Substack or something. I mean, but you're talking about here on FCC terrestrial, FCC licensed radio stations, AM stations. So that's different. And, of course, we'd gotten the credentials before, so, it was worth a
think about
shot.
This. You've got me, 30 years in the business, 10 years owning an AM radio station, credentials till the cows come home, not only as a talk show host, one of the top 250 talkers in the nation. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not here to beat my credentials, but I'm just saying it's beyond debate that they're there. Same thing for you. You've been a commentator on CNN. You've been in the business 20 years. You've been on AM and FM radio, traditional radio. You've been interviewed. We're both prolific writers. We write articles. You've written a book. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you and I are more important than everybody else, but I am saying to you, out of 7,400 requests, where do you think we fit in terms of credibility, consistency, reliability, longevity? I mean, I can keep going, right?
If you just want to go back to the association with Trump alone, keep in mind what you're talking about right now, by the way, is this headline from Media Matters, which is this left-wing auditor of basically they listen to every conservative or right-of-center media outlet, everything from neoconservative all the way to people like us and even further past us, and they just pay people to listen to everything everybody says, and then they attack people for the things that they say. That's basically Media Matters. But now Media Matters is sort of like this information clearinghouse for the left-wing establishment, and they are seen as sort of like the authority on what's what and who's who in right-wing media. And it was Media Matters that came out with this headline that reads, "The right dominates the online media ecosystem, seeping into sports, comedy, and other non-political spaces." And it says that 9 out of the top 10 online shows are right-leaning, and that out of the 400 and some odd podcasts and live streams and radio shows and things that they audited for this major piece of information that they did.
So let me get this right really quick. They audited 400, but the White House received over 7,400 requests.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you're going to have
They didn't even audit 5%, James.
Well, you're going to have with those people that flooded the White House with those requests, I mean, you're going to have some people that, frankly, just aren't really in the media. They just wanted to see
Well,
what they
that's
could
my
get
whole
away
point,
with.
though, that if you could literally prioritize those requests, if you had a form that put it into a spreadsheet and you literally had somebody that knew what they were doing, they could data mine that 7,400, request thing, and they could put the top 1,000 in place fairly easily, fairly quickly with about 5 people, buddy.
You would think that there's enough manpower in the federal government to sift through a few thousand submissions. Yes, that is not so many that it just overwhelmed them and they abandoned the project. It was probably a public relations stunt. But I will say this about Media Matters.
In other words, we the people are being punked.
Yes. Well, at least in terms of media, it wasn't an open call for all media. It was probably just for some of their friends that they wanted to do a favor for. But I will say this about Media Matters. So you say again, what does this have to do while y'all talking about it? Well, even with relation to the Trump campaigns of the past, Media Matters wrote an article in 2016 calling this network and yours truly one of the top 20. What did they call us? Right-wing media fixtures responsible for Trump's.
Yeah, and then they put on the congressional record through the Southern Poverty Law Center that you and I are the nexus of anti-government in America today. So how do you not get us at the relatively top of the list? Now, you can say, well, Sam, there's a lot of people more important. Fine. Out of the 7,400 people, put me at 6,000. I don't care. but don't act like I don't exist and ignore me for 2 months and pretend that you're really going to do the new media thing. I mean, after all, I'm the one that coined the new media take center stage phrase they stole half of, which I'm okay with. I'm just making a point, right?
Yeah, so again, I didn't expect much to come of that, but we always do our due diligence and kick the cans. But, I mean, this was, and I gave you the credentials of how at least the establishment views Media Matters, and they said we were one of the top 20 reasons Trump became the Republican nominee in 2016. That all goes back to the interview that they solicited, the Trump campaign solicited for Trump Jr. on this show. But it doesn't change the fact that out of the 400, and it was less than 500, somewhere between 400 and 500 live streams, podcasts, radio shows, you name it, that they audited for this new media, not counting the legacy, CNN, NBC, CBS, NPR, all of that stuff.
Yesteryear, yes.
Out of these 400 and something new media outlets that they audited for this huge story that is making some pretty big news today, they said that it was 5-1. It was right-wing 5-1. And that's what they're talking about when they're saying that, who controls the media now? It's no longer the New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, all the, the handful that had almost total control up until well into the 2000s. Now it is this conglomeration of hundreds of different podcasts and live streams and whatever that has supplanted. Now, none of them necessarily, well, I mean, people like Joe Rogan certainly do have bigger audiences than people like CNN.
Yeah, but
now.
hold on. Joe Rogan is not right-wing conservative new media. It isn't true.
Well, he's certainly new media. And he's certainly probably more at least open-minded to letting people like us speak our minds.
But to
than all of
suggest
them.
that guy's hardcore right-wing, like they're saying, it just isn't an accurate narrative.
Well, that was just one example of where you have people like that who have actually supplanted in terms of numbers people like CNN. Now, but I think the point of this story was who controls the media now, and there were these 400 shows.
Their point is right-wing controls the media now. My point is that's a lie, and it isn't true at all, and it's not even close to true. And there is new media people. So the question is the New York Times new media?
Well, I'm just saying the New York Times is not new media, but
yeah, they are. Hold on. All their paper subscribers are almost gone. They're down to 600,000 and tanking fast. All their new subscriptions are digital in nature, James. So the New York Times now, I don't know if you know, Donald Trump said it was going to be the end of the New York Times last administration. In other words, Trump 45. But all they've done is grown since big time. Here's the numbers. The New York Times reached 11.4 million subscribers. Annual revenue for 2024, 2.6 billion, up from 2.4 billion in 23. The NYT added more than 1.1 million net-only digital subscribers in 24 alone. What do you say to that?
All right, so they are sort
That's
of
new media,
trying
buddy.
to. Well, I think that's splitting hairs a little bit because this is an old media trying to adapt to the changing media landscape. But I think the overall
Not
point
trying.
of this,
They're getting it done in droves. 11.4 million people.
but even with that number, which is substantial, they are still getting routed 5-1 by this conglomeration. Now, Joe Rogan was one example of the high side of it, but I think the point of this Media Matters article was you have these hundreds, and we're going to be included in that, of these smaller outlets and entities that collectively are able to supplant the narrative-making control of the legacy media. And I mean, there is a lot of examples of that actually being true. I mean, now you have Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. I mean, these are some others. Tucker would be a sort of like the equivalent of what you were talking about. He was on Fox, but now he's doing his own thing and still getting millions and millions of viewers. But now they're asking questions about the USS Liberty. They're asking, was Churchill a hero? They're doing all of these things, and this is stuff that certainly we were trailblazers in doing, having these things. Matt Walsh calling, rejecting the old consensus that America is a melting pot and not a nation of blood and soil, calling for the United States to remove Emma Lazarus's doggerel from the Statue of Liberty. I mean, you have people now, they're going after, they're examining, frankly, the Jewish question. They're examining a lot of the things that were just third rail radioactive subject content that was only being covered by a precious few of us back 20 years ago. So I think that is evidence of the new media changing and supplanting what was controlled by the gatekeepers in the legacy press up until, as recently as 5 to 10 years ago. I think in that way, the media is changing.
Time is going to tell, and I think we are on a changing of the guard. The only question is, at the end of the day, will you have more free speech than you had before? Will you have more freedom than you had before? Or will you be locked down in just different ways? And that's really going to be the question going forward that we'll get into as the broadcast unfolds. Let me give you an example that I find fascinating. Headline says, Rumble launches Talk Live Streaming Lineup. It's a new format in which shows use the, quote, Rumble rating technology to follow one another and carry audiences seamlessly from one show to the next. Rumble chairman and CEO, guy by the name of Chris Pavlovski, basically says, hey, this is more proof that the content creators is the best place to be. And these new technologies that will bring you from one show to the next will help everyone and be great programming for viewers. It'll bring increased traffic and advertising across the board. It'll be tremendous. So they got this technology based on ratings now on Rumble, where all you got to do is, this technology will be enabled, and then it'll basically bring you from one show to the next, to the next, to the next based on ratings. You see a problem with this, James?
Well, I've never really understood how the whole ratings things work, because I mean, you can go on YouTube and find these videos of adults doing toy reviews or adults playing with kids' toys as part of a review, and it'll have like hundreds of millions of views. I mean, that would be more than like all of the establishment media combined. Why not just get Donald Trump on that, on that content creators show, and he would like dominate the media. So I don't exactly understand how they quantify hits and views and things like that. One good measuring stick is to see who can put on a conference and fill the room, as we are able to do, as you are able to do, and I am able to do, and we are able to do collectively and separately. That's where you've got an audience. If people will turn out and travel across the country and come and spend a couple of nights at a hotel, and that you've got an audience there. These people that are getting all these views, but I don't know about that. I'm not. I mean, that could obviously be manipulated and controlled as well.
Oh yeah, because I mean, they
for
could
sure.
just determine if they get in bed with Media Matters or get some funding with Media Matters, or even maybe the Trump administration. They're just like, hey, Sam and James, they're not that important. We're not going to let the show follow from them to somebody else. In fact, if we pick somebody else that's less rated than Sam and James, pretty soon they'll be more rated if we let them follow Tucker. Or let them follow
all of that.
Glenn Beck, or let them. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Now, here's the final statement from Rumble on this thing, and I really think it's important. Then I'll let you rock and roll on this a little bit more. Unlike the broadcast day on a, quote, television network, Rumble adheres to the principles of free speech. And these are shows that people actually want to watch. Now, that's great, but what does that mean when we say these are shows people want to watch? So were we included in the 400 Media Matters thing? Did they give a list of the 400 they did?
It did not. It only gave a list of about the top 40.
So they write articles about us, attack all of us, turn us into the congressional record as bad guys, terrorists, enemies of the state, whatever you want to call it. Don't know if we're in the 400 or not, see? Then you go to Caroline Levitt, our side of the stage. Caroline Levitt, I think, is a great person, by the way, doing a great job eating them alive. I agree with all that, except for it's a little bit two-tiered. So she's rock star, Tucker's rock star, Elon's rock star, the rich are in, but you and I will not be part of that. They will make dang sure of it, James.
Well, I mean, you work with the people you're most comfortable with, and morally speaking, I mean, there are people further to my right that I'm not comfortable association with, and maybe we're too far for some of the people a little bit more mainstream. I don't like it, of course, but I mean, it's not. We do what we do, and we do a good job, and we are the shepherds of our flock that God gave us, and I'm thankful for that. And I would always like to do more and be more effective, but I've always been content with the station that God put us at. I mean, literally with the radio stations, but also figuratively our station and our standing in this whole thing. But I still think though. But yes, I mean, of course, we would fit in well with all of those others, and our professionalism speaks for itself. But I do think, though, the ultimate takeaway from this is that when you take these hundreds of new media outlets, that they have been able to break through the gatekeeping mechanisms that had been in place for decades.
If that's true, the key for our, quote, mojo would be for us all to work together, right?
Well, I mean, I don't work together with everybody who shares my beliefs. I get it. I mean, we can't all be part of Trump's travel contingent and company.
No,
I mean,
we can't.
I'm not saying we don't
necessarily
deserve
want
it.
to sit in the White House press room either, but we could work together, and I don't see anybody making efforts to pool our resources for mojo reach, if you will. I don't. But what I do see is attacks on individuals still that relate to us. Do you know who Joe Pags is?
I've heard the name. I don't know who he is.
Joe Pags is a well-known talk show host. I think it's Cumulus Media that he's syndicated through. Well, Joe Pags just got swatted.
Oh, that's a lot of that's going on right now.
They brought heavily armed police officers to his home at 2:30 in the morning. Pags recounted the events for his listeners and posted a video of what happened on X. Pags said that he quickly called 911. He identified himself. He told the operator that he thought he was being swatted, and he asked if the cops were at his house. They said yes. After confirming that it was the police at his house, Pags was able to get the officers to stand down and assure them that there was no reason to be there. Pags tells his listeners that the goal of the swatters was to get him to grab his gun and go outside, in which case he'd probably be dead right now. Now, very interesting. Nobody's telling you about that. But Joe Pags, I was on a webinar with Joe and Vivek Ramaswamy and several other people. So, these people are in my orbit to some degree. Joe's a friend. I've seen him at a couple of events recently, everything else. And I just go, how come this swatting is allowed to continue? Can't we get a handle on the system?
Well, this has actually come out in the news. I mean, you want to talk about degrees of separation. We know congressmen and former congressmen that tour around with all these people and know everybody, all the way up to the president. And, as obviously as members of Congress have worked with them. So there's not a lot of separation between us, but there is still that plausible deniability that they.
Well, there's sure money separation. I can promise you that.
Well, there's that. But the thing with swatting is, that there has been a rash of that. And what swatting is, I'm sure everybody knows, but if you don't, it's where you get some sort of Antifa or left-wing activist who says there's, a man with a gun and he's holding people hostage or something like that at this particular address. And then, of course, they don't just send a single cop to go over there. They send a SWAT team.
They
and
send
beat
the
down the door.
team, yeah.
Yeah, and then they go in there, and of course, they're expecting there to be, they're on a hairpin level of response, thinking that they could get shot. And so if a guy makes a false move, he's dead. But they are doing this. They have done this. I have a friend who is one of these popular live streamers who's been swatted multiple times. And so what these left wingers do is they'll call in this fake threat, and then the SWAT team goes, and it's very traumatizing. I mean, certainly it could lead to the death of the person who was being falsely accused of needing a visit by the SWAT team. But it has been in the news in the last couple of days that there's been a rash of this.
Yeah, but hold on. Can't they get a handle on this, James? I mean, they can tell you that you didn't pay $1 to the IRS, buddy.
Yeah, it has happened so much now that the default position of a SWAT team would be to take this is a dangerous thing too, but to take every call with a grain of salt now. I mean, and it has happened it's been going on for a few years.
If there really is a crisis, they've debunked it to where no one takes it as a serious crisis, or they come to your house armed to the teeth. Joe Pag says, hey, he had a digital camera and he literally saw a cop there with an AR-15 ready to go. And so he's like, hey, man, I'm calling 911. I'm not going outside. I see this going on. Well, if you didn't have cameras and if you weren't as careful and wise as Joe Pags, you'd be in serious trouble, buddy.
Exactly. And so, of course, the people who just hate the diversity of opinion, they hate these conservative hosts and podcasters and whatever. I mean, if they don't, get them hurt or killed, it's still just a great laugh to upset them. And, for the people who are calling in these false, bogus calls, it's entertainment for them to see this upheaval and this upsettedness that, of course, anybody who has this done to them is going to experience. But it has, in the last couple of days, there's been a rash of this that has selectively been targeting conservative content creators. So, yeah, that's a problem. To say the least.
Where do you think we go with this? I mean, they really can't get to the bottom of this and stop this?
Unless they have a database of, is this guy that we're getting this call on involved in conservative media?
To me, it isn't about that. It's about how do you make a call and you can't document the origins of the call.
I actually got a couple of emails this week.
Hold on a minute. Modern technology lets you literally track cell phones, triangulate, tell where people are, everything else. How do you just let this happen across the world? You're like, well, Sam, this is the internet. We don't have control of it. Not true.
Well, that's actually a good point, and that is that certainly anybody who's making these dangerously false calls should be arrested and go to prison themselves.
They're not. They're running around laughing. They're probably tied to Southern Poverty Law Center and tied to Media Matters and tied to all these clowns, right?
Or at least supporters of them ideologically, if not like the one SPLC guy who got arrested for blowing up or being involved with a group that was throwing Molotovs at a police training center. But I mean, you would think that they would have the technology to just say, oh, well, this call came from here. We're going to go arrest this guy now for making this false report. But apparently a lot of these people get away with it. In fact, most of them do. And anyway, it's
but how do you get away with this, and how do you set up these swatting calls? They're using technology and systems and everything else that should have logs and be able to track this kind of stuff.
That's absolutely right. It boggles the mind.
I'm not buying that they can't get to the bottom of it. I'm telling you that they're allowing this to happen intentionally, and people's lives are at stake. Meanwhile, they're going, yeah, Canada should be the 51st state. By the way, we're going to release the JFK files and tell you the truth now. Yeah, we're going to let the new media take center stage. Let's create new media. You want to join us? I'm just telling you right now, we're all being punked. Next hour, I've got more of the Associated Press losing credibility big time, too. We'll talk about that. I'm Sam Bushman. I've got James Edwards with me, thepoliticalcesspool.org. Incredible talk radio on the weekends as well. You got to love it. All right, hang tight. More in seconds. God save the Republic.